Hey friends, welcome to the Entrusted to Lead podcast. I'm your host, Jeanette Peterson, and this is session 2 of our 3-part series where we're speaking with women veterans from across the country who are carving out their niche in the business and consulting industries while still striving to lean into their faith as a core part of both their mission and their mindset. Today on this episode, I talk with Jeanette Peterson. She is a powerhouse Air Force veteran. She successfully mentored, empowered, and inspires women and helps them turn their businesses into their ministries. She's also the host of the Unapologetically Unstoppable podcast. So I hope you enjoy this candid conversation where we talk about faith and business and our military experiences and all the things combined. So I hope you enjoy today's episode. Let's get started. Doing things alone is entirely overrated. We all need a community to thrive. And that's why I'm part of an online community of writers and speakers, podcasters, and entrepreneurs called Creatives. And I love it. In the years since I joined this community, I've launched new ideas and I finally executed the dreams that sat on the shelf for years. Seriously. And I was able to do this because of the outstanding group of mentors, exceptional training, and encouraging mastermind groups with my new friends who did and continue to give me invaluable feedback. Oh, and not to mention all the fun, because we have had lots and lots of fun. Have you ever said, I want to write a book? Or do you want to use your voice for the exciting world of podcasting? If so, Called Creatives is your best resource for up-to-the-minute industry training, expert advice, live coaching, and peer support like no other. Best-selling authors and speakers Allie Worthington and Lisa Whittle lead this community with a no-competition mission, and it shows. So join my friends and I in the Called Creative community. Head to my show notes, JeanettePeterson.com/podcast, and click the link to get all the details to join. I promise you won't regret it. I look forward to seeing you in the community and watching you grow. Hey everyone, welcome to the Entrusted to Lead podcast. I'm your host, Jeanette Peterson, and I am joined by my new friend, Jeanette Peterson. She is a coach and she also is an Air Force veteran. So she's joining us for session 2 of our 3-part series where we're talking about faith and freedom. She is a powerhouse Air Force veteran who has successfully mentored, empowered, and inspired women, and she helps them turn their businesses into their ministries. She's a mentor, a speaker, she's a mom, she's a homeschooler. She's got a lot of things that she's doing. And she's also the host of the Unapologetically Unstoppable podcast, which I personally have listened to, and it's super awesome. So I'm just excited for her to come today and share some of her stories. So thank you so much for coming on the show today. How are you, friend?
Good. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm so glad we connected. So I gave your 30-second bio, but do you want to tell everybody a little bit more about yourself and your story and how you came to be where you are today?
Yeah. So I was medically separated. So if you guys are not military, it means that you've got some medical issue that the military is like, okay, you are no longer fit to go to war necessarily. So we're going to say goodbye. We're going to end our contract early. And that broke my heart. I'm not going to lie. I was heartbroken because, okay, so the military is like a very toxic relationship. Let's be real. It's not the best, but I want to end it on my terms. I want to be the one to say, see you later, Air Force. I'm sticking it to the man. But I didn't get that choice. So
yeah. Oh,
but it was
so
totally
hard.
a God thing. So I was struggling to get pregnant in the military. And a lot of it I would liken to like the high stress environment, the vibe of go, 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 don't stop. If you're not dead, you still have more to give. Keep going. Say goodbye to all your friends and family. They're not as important as what you're doing here in the military. And so I didn't get married until I was a staff sergeant, which is an E5, which is kind of later in the military life. And so I'd already been that person who would stay late, who was doing all those things. So when I got with my husband, it was a shift of like, I don't know who I'm supposed to choose. Am I supposed to choose the military or am I supposed to choose my husband? And who am I supposed to spend more time with? And a lot of the time I picked the military because that's what I knew. And it sucked for him and it was not a good thing. And then we were trying to get pregnant. So as we were trying to get pregnant, it just wasn't happening. I was high stress. It was too much. My body was like, no, I don't know. I'm going to say missing
Yeah.
periods. Like I was going to say all the things, like it
Yeah.
just wasn't happening. And so I was doing the things I was supposed to be doing to get pregnant. I was tracking my temperatures. I was looking at the calendar constantly. I was doing my ovulation calendar and doing all the things. And I was like obsessed with what was going on with my body. And I was just like, what is happening? I am literally like, I know how to be perfect because the military taught me so. What is wrong with me? Like, what is happening where I cannot get pregnant? And so I was talking to my doctor. We started going through the infertility process, which meant I had to be tracking for a year before I was able to go to the infertility doctor. And at the end of that process, I was so exhausted. And I told my husband, I said, look, I don't really know how to pray. I know you're like serious Christian guy over here, and I am not, but let's pray. Let's like get in the bathtub. I feel like being naked does something better because you're like totally exposed and vulnerable. Let's get in the bathtub and let's pray. And so we prayed, and I was like, God, I don't know if you know this, but I'm done. I'm done tracking. I'm done looking at the calendar because if you want me to get pregnant, I was like 29 at this time. No, 30. I was 30 at this time. I was like, if you want me to get pregnant, I'm coming up on my biological clock. It's ticking and I'm done. I'm done trying to do this. So this is on you now. I am not doing this anymore. And I totally gave it up to God. And I promise you that prayer changed my entire life. That was the prayer. Because after that prayer, I prayed that prayer in like October. Then in December, I found out I was pregnant.
Wow.
Like, yeah. And then April, the next year, I was out of the military and we were PCSing in July across the country. So I was like, okay, well, I asked for this. So here we go with life.
Wow.
And I realized, okay, if I pray in a way that is so convicting and so heartfelt and just literally giving it all to God, not like kind of giving it to God, but like really giving it to God and being like, I am completely done. This is not my problem anymore, God. This is your problem. Then God will move. God will change your life if you ask him. And I was not like reading my Bible every day. I was not praying every day. I was not going to church. I was not the perfect Christian, but God could still change your life. And I didn't realize it until I looked back and was like, God did all this. It had nothing to do with me. I was just like so enamored. So after that, I was like, I have to live a life for God. If I'm not going to live a life that's bigger than me in the Air Force anymore, it's got to be for God. And I told my husband that, and he was like, okay, sure, whatever. He didn't really understand at that point, but I was like, no, like my next job is for Jesus. Like, so I started doing everything I could to learn more about God, got plugged into my church, got baptized after my baby was born in Sin City of all places. And I was just about it. And I've been on fire for Jesus ever since.
No, that's so good. As you're talking, I'm just thinking through that's just surrender, right? You just surrendered in the most vulnerable of ways, like you're saying, like literally I had nothing. I was naked. I was just like naked and afraid. I had nothing. I gave it all up. And you did. You just surrendered. And I think, well, I want to dig into that a little bit more, but like I'm thinking through as you're talking about that, like for the person who's sitting there, like I do pray, and I do have faith, but I think there is a place. I know for me, my life changed. My life radically changed when I got to that place where I had nothing left. And it was literally, my story was different. I actually was pregnant and it was unplanned, and I had deployed after 9/11 and I was already a single mom. I joined the Air Force. I got married. I had a baby. I deployed, we were in DC in 9/11. So in January of 2002, I went out the door as a staff sergeant as an E5. I left. My daughter was 2. And when I came home, she was 3 and she didn't know who I was. And
oh my gosh.
I came home to a marriage in ruin, on the verge of bankruptcy, just all the things, and ended up getting separated and then getting pregnant unplanned. And my husband, who is my husband now, was active duty, but we weren't married, and he was stationed across the country. And I remember coming back to my unit after being on a humanitarian assignment, take care of my mom for several months because she had 2 spinal fusion injuries. And I came home because I had to come back to my unit because I couldn't get an assignment, and I was pregnant and I was a single mom, and I had, it was all alone, and I didn't tell anyone except my neighbor. And I said, I'm pregnant. And she said, well, I think you should get an abortion. And I told her, I think you're right. I totally should, because what else am I supposed to do? Like, I don't have food. I can't take care of my baby. I loved my Air Force career so much that I tell people now, like, I wanted to be the first female chief master sergeant in the Air Force. Like that was my goal.
Me too. I was
and
like,
when
I'm going to be the first Black chief master sergeant in the Air Force. They thought it was nuts.
When Joan Bass put her jacket on, I watched that. Did you watch it online?
Yes, I was like,
I was bawling. I was like sitting on my couch. I'm 45 years old and I'm like bawling. And my kids are like, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, she finally did it. So great for her. I do know God has a plan, but I was like the same way. I was just like, I had all these plans and I had all of these things. And then that is not what ended up happening. And so that was the first time in my life, my boss, who was a Department of Army civilian, but also a pastor of a church, had bought a bunch of movie tickets for us to go see The Passions of the Christ. And he came to work one day and I didn't tell anybody I was pregnant because I had scheduled an abortion in Baltimore and I was going to go have my abortion. And he came in and said, do you guys want to go see this movie? And I was like, oh, I can't go to a movie. I'm a single mom. I can't go to a movie, So he said, well, just come to dinner. We're all going to go eat dinner. So we went to some steakhouse and ate. And I was leaving to go home with my daughter. And my colleague, who is older, and she had some kids who were like 16, she said, hey, we live right behind the movie theater. Just bring your daughter over. And my daughter can watch your daughter. It's not a big deal, I promise. And so we ran over. I dropped my daughter off. I come right back to the movie theater and I walk right into the like last seat in the front row and I sit down. And it was like the first time where God was real. And I tell people, like, I was saved on a little white church bus when I was 9 and they gave me a little white Bible and, about this man who died for me. But it was that moment where I like literally it changed my life. And to your point, like I had nothing left. Like I had nothing left. Yeah. It wasn't like I was like in my own strength. I couldn't do it. There was no one to help me. I think when you get to that place of surrender, when you get to that place of just, I have nothing left, then it's like, that's when the work starts. But you know what I mean?
Oh, you're making me cry.
I just think it's so funny because we didn't know this. We didn't even talk about this on the pre-pod. Like, we don't even know each other. But it's so that our stories are similar in terms of like, we had an Air Force career. We loved our Air Force career. And then two completely polar things. You were trying to have a baby. I was like, didn't want to have any more babies at the time. And how God intervened, you know what I mean, in such a powerful way that changed your life. So now today, so fast forward, so you get out of the Air Force and now you're, expecting a baby. And then when did you shift? Because I know you work in industry, you work as, contractor too, but when did you get to the place where you're like, okay, Lord, I'm going to live my life for you and have a passion to kind of like start your coaching and consulting business? And when did that kind of come?
Oh man, that was like a whole transition also. It was like a de-shedding of that militarization of like, okay, I had to go through this process of who am I? I don't even know who I am right now without veteran or Air Force member on my chest, because when I would walk into a room, people would respect my rank and I got things done and they knew who I was. But now if I walk around with no uniform on, they don't even look at me twice. And I was like, wait a second, it's like almost like I felt like I was nobody without it. I was like, nobody knows who I am. Nobody respects me anymore. Nobody, like my identity was caught up in the Air Force. I had to go through the demilitarization of who am I? What do I like? And what is life after the military? So when we lived in Vegas, I started going to church, right? And I met this girl and she was like living this alternate lifestyle, I would say, of like, she was building a business online and she was homeschooling her kids and she was unschooling and she was heavy into the church. And I was like, I've never seen a life that looks like this before. This is different. You see like Sister Wives or Real Housewives on TV, but this life is not on TV. Like, what is this life? This life is something I actually would want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I studied her, not in a weird, creepy way, but I was just like, okay, how do you do this? How do you build this business? How do you have all this free time, but also are building this $1 million business from your house? And so I started watching her. And like during the time, I was like trying to figure out what I could do to make money. So I tried different things. I tried real estate, didn't really love it, but I did look at, okay, I do like the marketing part of it. I do like talking to people. I do like showing them what their life could be like that part of it. I don't like the contracts. I don't like helping people if they don't know what they want. I don't like any of that. So I started on this journey of creating different businesses. So we did that. Me and my husband got out of debt. And so we went through Dave Ramsey's course. We took his financial coaching course and we became financial coaches. And then working with my husband, I was like, some of these things I love about you, but they're not good in a business with me. I don't love this. He's very like high ADHD, high visionary, but not a doer. So I was like doing all the things for him, and I didn't like the way that felt. Like I was like, no, guy, I'm not going to just have you create this whole Facebook group and then just be like, oh, I'm going to go do this other thing. I'm stuck here to clean up all the pieces. But I did like coaching people and helping people. Like only people, though, I realized through this whole process was I don't like people who have a mission and it's bigger than themselves and they are on fire for whatever that mission is. It's not just about money. It's not just about getting a big house. It's bigger than that. And I want to only work with people like that. And so I started doing marketing. I started trying to get a marketing degree, and I realized I don't need a marketing degree. I can just learn from people online. So I took a lot of online classes, and I was just like, okay, this is what I want. I want to help women who are at this crossroads of their life where they're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do next, and help them be reminded of who they are, who God made them to be, because everybody has a unique purpose, and remind them that we are created specifically for a thing. It's not like we're just supposed to be going through the phases every day of the mundane life of cooking dinner and being a good wife. That might be your thing, right? I'm not saying that's not your thing, but I'm saying, but it could also be something else. It could also be raising your children. You could just be in this section of life that you're at. That could just be your thing. And for me, I know that it's to be an encourager, to encourage people and to help them and lift them up and show them who God is and show them what love is. So that way they know that control isn't love, that manipulation isn't love, and that pure form of love that Jesus has for us. Because the military, I thought, loved me, but they kicked me to the curb. And it wasn't even real love. It was just, I need you to do this for me, love. And I don't actually care if you are here as a person. I just need a slot in this position. So I realized that people at a crossroads, especially women, need to be reminded of who they are. And it's not just mom. It's not just veteran. It's not just airman. We are multifaceted people for a reason.
Yeah. No, I think that's really good. I love that you kind of unwrap those different identity journeys, like you're saying, that you go on. And I feel like a lot of veterans do that. Male or female, doesn't matter. We all go through, I think, identity journeys. I feel like in the military, when we leave the military space, it's just something that's such a part of us. It's almost harder it's not, I've never been a doctor, so I don't know what it's like, the sacrifice to go to medical school and be a doctor, right? But I have 2 kids who are first responders, so I see them go through their schooling and go through their training and put so much of their time and their heart into being, EMTs and paramedics or whatever. That's the only thing I can equate to it at this point, but it's just different. I think in the military, we really internalize. And I think that's good because from the perspective of like the value system that the military carries, we strive to do that, right? Loyalty and honor and courage and trust and all those things. And I think for Christians or people of faith, there's synergy there, right? Those are the same values that I raise my, family in. Right. But I, like you, had to kind of unwrap that. Like I had to understand military like leadership, models of leadership, servant leadership, and then understand from a biblical principle God's, character, God's, those things. And I do think that's a journey. So I think that's really good. So today you coach women specifically and helping them build businesses and helping them kind of find their unique purpose and their design. And then you also have your podcast and your mom and you homeschool. And then talk a little bit about your podcast, just because I'm like podcast biased, but talk a little bit about that. Like what's your heart and purpose for your podcast and what does that offer to the world?
The podcast was completely God. Like I had no desire to make a podcast ever, but God was like, nope, I made you to use your voice. Yeah. So I need you to start using your voice. And he told me to make a podcast years ago. And I always was like, okay, well, I'll find this girl to do it with me. But then God was like, nope, it's supposed to be just you. So I made the podcast. And right now we're doing 3 times a week, which I love. And they're like little 10-minute episodes. There's no more than 20 minutes on any of them. And it's all about your faith. There's always a Bible lesson every week, and there's always a business lesson. So I'll talk about marketing or what your website looks like or leadership, self-leadership, something that I've learned through the last, 15 years of being in the military and being an entrepreneur, all the things that you need to learn. So the recordings I did today were about how we can identify as women and be like lit up on Jesus and do the things we're supposed to be doing for ministry. There's a lady in the Bible, her name is Priscilla, and she is I want to be her.
Oh,
I want to be her. Is her and her husband Aquil, and they're basically Paul's BFFs. They met him in Corinth, and they are like on fire for Jesus, and they are business owners, and they're like a power couple. And I was like, okay, these are people that I want to be like. I mean, Beyonce and Jay-Z, yes, but more like these guys.
Yeah. But maybe these ones. Yeah, that's so good. I had a conversation with a pastor years ago about the Proverbs 31 woman and how she it's not just, she has, storehouses and she does all these things and she takes care of family. And so I think you hit on an important point about this, being a woman of faith and being a business owner and being a veteran, because I feel like that's that intersection, which you and I talked about before, it's such a small populace, I feel of people. We'll have to do the statistics later and analyze the data, but I feel like I'm alone a lot, or I've struggled to find my tribe, for if you will. And so do you want to talk a little bit about your journey as being a veteran? You left the military, not on your own terms. So that was transition. You had to grieve and work through that. Then you found this lady in your church and you're like, what she's got is something that I want. I don't know what it is, but let me follow and watch her. And then now you've got, to this place where you're helping others. But do you want to talk a little bit about that journey for your finding that intersection between business and the military and faith, and how you've navigated that to be where you are today?
Yeah, I think I had to realize that a lot of the skills that were taught in ALS or any of those leadership schools, those are actually good business principles. Yeah. So I was at a point where I was like, I just want to completely compartmentalize everything that happened in the military and get rid of it and start over. But I can't, because it's also part of me. And those things that they taught me aren't bad things. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. They are good principles, but sometimes the way that they're manipulated aren't good. Yeah. So I have to weed through all those good lessons. So when I was trying to talk to this girl and I was asking her, all right, you've got people underneath you. How do you talk to them? How do you get them to do what you want? And she's like, well, it's kind of like a love sandwich. You tell them love and then you tell them what they're bad at and then you give them love at the end. I was like, I know that. These are not new things to me. These are rock solid principles that I was like, oh, I just need to take all the leadership skills that I already have, because I've already been leading teams, especially at a young age when you're in the military. They're like, oh, you're 21 and a staff sergeant? Cool. You're running this whole shop. I have those skills. We have those skills. So I'm like, why didn't I just transition them to a business? Why am I just going back to being a widget maker or whatever? That's not who I am. So I had to go back to finding all those things that I'm really good at from the military and looking at them objectively. I think that I was so hurt. Like you said, I had to go through a grieving process. I was so hurt that I just wanted to shut it all down and not even think about it. But I had to really go through and be like, okay, these are skills that I know. These are things that I know work, like SOPs and stuff like that are great for businesses that I didn't even think of should be in business. Or even your rank structure or your organizational chart. I would just look at those and be like, okay, those are for the military. And then not realizing that is also business. Yeah. It's the same kind of principles, just a little bit different. So I had to realize this is actually the same. I'm not actually so far off from the military. I just have a new CEO. Yeah. I am now partnered with God and not the president of the United States. And that's fine. You know what I mean?
Yes, I love that. That's so good. You're exactly right. There was a place where I got through this journey of freedom and biblical freedom versus American freedom and this concept of freedom.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's really important, because I guess the point, I just want people to understand, the people who are listening, it's we do compartmentalize things, right? Even though we this male versus female mind thing or whatever, but we do compartmentalize things, right? And I think a lot of that comes through control. It's because we try to control chaos, because if we can control it, then it doesn't hurt so much. And then we've got all those things. But I believe that I'm actually working on a book about purpose. So that wasn't really what we talked about before. But anyway, I've been writing this book about purpose, about the pursuit of purpose and how it causes Christians such anxiety and why. What is the psychology of purpose and the theology, and what does the Bible really say? But I got to this place in my lesson that my discovery journey for the last year, right? That our purpose, I believe, is for all of God to live through all of us, whatever that looks like you're saying. So for the person who's decided, I'm going to, be a stay-at-home mom and I'm going to homeschool and I'm going to do this thing, that's great. right? Then let all of God live through all of you. For the
Yes.
woman who's decided she wants to be an educator in the public school system because she's passionate about taking her values to the school and to the marketplace, then that's great too. You know what I mean? Let all of who God is live through all of you. And I feel like if we could do that as Christians, but as women, you know what I mean, inside the circle, and really just really love and empower our sisters no matter what they do, like there would be a community and a church that would overflow with the passion and love of Christ. Like the world would not understand the magnitude of what they're dealing with. And that's just me personally. My husband says that too. He's like, women are the mama bears of like the world, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I feel like we struggle sometimes too. And I've seen that too in my faith journey. It's just trying to help me, myself. I have 2 daughters and 2 sons, but just helping them to like see that you're uniquely, you know, like you said, designed. Let all of God live through all of you. And then go do that thing, like you're saying, with confidence.
I think that's the hardest part is like having that confidence, because sometimes it's not like I don't know that I'm good enough, but it's like, I don't think I'm good enough to do all these things.
Yeah.
And then I have to remember, I don't have to be good enough. God has to be good enough. And God is good enough.
Yeah, that's right.
So I just have to do what he's telling me to do. I just have to, like you said, share God's love as in all facets of my life and be obedient to him, whatever that looks like. So if that means starting the podcast, okay, God, I'm going to start the podcast and it's going to be for you. Whatever you tell me to talk about, I'm going to talk about, and then just keep moving.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the small things, the minutia.
Yeah, I think that's important too. There's another guest I was talking to, and she was talking about she had to get to the place or the mindset of like the provider versus the resource. And she used a different word, but it was like God is the provider of all of the things. And then she is just given the resources in order to do, you know, where provision comes from versus where the resources. And that was a paradigm shift for her, really. Like she had to really adjust her whole perspective. And you would think from a person of faith, you're like, well, I know that, right? I know God is sovereign. And I know that he's in all things, for all things, of all things, like, you know what I mean? Infused in the world and all things that we can't understand. But then why is it so hard when we're trying to do it? Why is grocery shopping so hard some days, or homework or whatever? So I think that's really good. I think you made a good point. We're just like, I know that it's not in my own strength. Back to surrender, which is not a military term. Right?
No.
Not something we say, I want to surrender every day. No. But I think that's an important lesson. You know, you don't have to have served in the military to understand that you get to a certain point in your life. I think all of us, it could be job, it could be health, it could be family, right? It could be whatever. But I think we all reach a point where there's a disappointment, or we come to the place where we're kind of face to face with the finality of life and our inability to do the thing. And then we all kind of have to answer that question. So it's hard.
I actually made a course called Surrender, and it's all about learning how to surrender to God, because sometimes we don't hear his voice and we think that he's missing, and that's not always true. Yeah. He uses so many different things to talk to us. I don't know if you've ever read Mark Batterson's Whisper.
Yeah.
He is, man, that dude. Yes. He's like my best friend. I've never met him, obviously, but he's my best friend.
I do love him. And The Circle Maker and Chase the Lion. Yes. I've read lots of his books. Yes.
Oh, The Circle Maker is so good. Yeah. But like, you got to remember all the ways that God talks to us and how to feel his presence through the fruit of the Spirit. Like being scared and being nervous about something does not necessarily mean God's not there. Yeah. It just means that you're doing something that's uncomfortable, and uncomfortable is okay. God never says that we're going to be comfortable hanging out every day when we're doing his work. That's not what it is. So you feel that little uncomfortableness and just keep going at it.
I love that you said that, because I had this conversation. We were talking about that, about like, I just want to be a Christian so I have a good life. And I was like, there's no grace bus. God didn't call, I mean, it's not like a trolley. You just get on it and it just drives you around. And because you love Jesus, or because you're a person of faith, or you're like, you know, I'm going to do this, that just automatically means that all the things fall into place. I think that faith is very much like, for me, I use this example again, like as a muscle, right? Faith is a muscle, and it only grows if you use it. So in order to use it, it hurts. It's like working out, or if you had an injury or you had to go to physical therapy, like you got to use it, and that hurts. You come home at the end of the day, and like you said, it's sore, but that doesn't mean that you don't stop trusting in, you know, And over
Yes, the
time,
process.
I think that too. I was thinking that when you were talking about that, about discernment, and I was going to ask you that question about your journey from self-reliance in the military's lenses that you looked through the world to how did you, and do you, because that's an evolutionary process, learn how to discern like the voice of God? Like, what do you tactically do in your daily journey to kind of help you grow those muscles?
So for me, I have to get quiet. I have to like go in a space of quietness. And this is going to sound really like hippie-ish, but I have to lay in my driveway because I feel like when I'm fully surrounded by the ground because the creator of the universe made it and
Yeah.
it's touching my body, it's different than air, right? And I can feel
Sure.
it. And I'm like, I'm being held by God right now. And if I have like my headphones in and I'm listening to worship music, that's when I feel the most connected to God because I'm like, He is touching every part of my body. He's in my ear. He's surrounding me. And
Wow.
that's normally when I like get into my deep prayer. And that's when I hear him the clearest and the loudest. When everything else is like not coming at me. It's like social media is so intrusive. Like you roll down the street and there's billboards everywhere. Everything is so intrusive of trying to get your attention. You just got to like let everything away. And when I do that, or I have my walks, and I'm just like walking in nature and I can hear the birds chirping and all the things that he's created, I'm like, okay, I am a creature of earth because God made it and God has designed all of these things and everything's great. I can feel him and hear him there.
Yeah.
It's hard when I'm like doing the motions. We've got dance this day. We're doing this. We're having friends over, making dinner. I got to check all these boxes off and I'm running through the calendar. I don't hear God then because I'm not listening.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a daily practice? I mean, I don't know. You literally lay in your driveway? Is that what you mean? Like you literally lay in my driveway. I love your neighbors. Do you have neighbors? I'm just thinking through
They probably think I'm the weird one. I swear to you. They're just like,
so good.
Hi.
So good. They're like, there she goes again, laying in her driveway. Yeah. There's the Jesus lady. No, that's so good. I think that's so good. I'm a very not earth, wind, and fire person, but I'm kind of, at this space in my life, I really do. My husband and I have lots of conversations about like God created the entire world and we live in like a wooded area now. And so we have tons of trees and he does woodworking and he loves wood. Like every tree is uniquely created and it's its own and there will never be another one like it. And he says, so if God took the time to create a tree and a species and the woods, all the things in trees, how much more did he create in us?
Right.
He's always like, he makes tables and all of this stuff. And he's constantly like, look at this pattern, look at this, whatever, look at this fingering, look at this, whatever. So the more and more we get older and as time has gone by and we've lost people that we love. And I just really kind of like the spirit world as a whole world, we don't really know anything about. So I think it's really the natural piece of that is really, I think, an important element of just getting to that place of like, the world is really loud. There's lots of messages. There's lots of things coming at us all the time. And you being intentional about, okay, I have to shut all of that out. Not that it's evil, because I mean, it's there, but it is an intentional process of like just being intentional about shutting out all the world and laying in the grass, like you said, which I love.
I like you saying that it's not necessarily evil because like sometimes my kids will be like, asking for my attention and trying to get me to do things when I'm trying to work because I'm homeschooling. It's so easy for them to just come in my office and distract me.
Yeah.
And it's not bad to give them attention. I'm not saying that at all, but sometimes it's like, I literally have to do this for God first. So I need you guys to go and do your homework. Okay. Because it's not bad that I'm giving them attention, but it's bad when I'm not following his direction, even though I'm paying attention to my kids. It's gotta be God first. It's gotta be God first, always. And it's so easy to be like, this is not evil, but it is not good for me right now in this moment. I can't give you 100% of my attention. I can after I'm done with this, but not right now.
Yeah, but anyone doing anything does that. You know what I mean? I say that because how old are your kids?
They're young. So 5 and 3.
Okay. Yeah. Mine are 24, 22, 18, and 16. So I say this sometimes when I'm like, if I could go back and tell my 22-year-old mom's self, I would tell her, it's going to be fine. You're not going to break them. But no, I think that's important. I mean, take it out of the context of you're working at home and you're running a business and you're doing these things. That would be the same thing for anything. I mean, our children learn self kind of not self-reliance, but you know what I mean? Self-soothing. They
Right.
learn how to like whatever. And there are boundaries. There are healthy boundaries all the time. And I feel like that is a struggle, I think, because we homeschooled for years, different times when we were PCSing and our kids needed different educational things at different seasons. So I did homeschool for different seasons. And that even gets a little bit harder because there's not the clear demarcation point. Like kids left for school, and then mom is
Right.
here, and then kids come home, and then mom is here. It's like everything is all fused together. So I think you setting boundaries in your home and your schedule and your day that are age appropriate for your children is completely a healthy thing for them. So yeah. And you fill that block with, I'm going to work on my business for an hour or half an hour, and you guys are going to watch a movie, and then we're going to have playtime before we have dinner, and mom's going to work on this. Like, no, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all.
It was hard, especially leaving
Really?
the military when they don't like that you have boundaries against them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was hard for me to like figure out what good boundaries are and how to make them, especially with my husband and my kids, where I was like, I didn't know. I was like an all or nothing. I was like, I can give you all of my attention or I can
Yeah.
give you none of my attention, and I didn't understand how to create boundaries. I'm a book nerd, so I had to read a book.
Yeah. The Boundaries book by Dr.
Boundaries
Henry
book.
Cloud. Yes.
Yep,
I love
Dr.
that one.
Henry Cloud.
Yeah. That book changed my life. Yeah.
Yes.
We'll have to just start reading a lesson
Dude,
library thing.
I'm so down.
Well, yeah. Here are the books we're sharing with you this week. Changed my life. That Boundaries book changed my life. And I think that's important. I have a good friend. She does some like teaching and biblical teaching. And I went through a weekend retreat with her, and she taught about boundaries and basically love, you know, and she used the verse in 1 John, I think 4:19, we love because he first loved us. And then she used that as the basis of what love is. But she talked a lot about boundaries, and boundaries are love. And I think that's something that we don't quite also understand in the world either, is that boundaries don't all have to be walls. You know, fences have gates so people can come in and out, but you've got to do that within the context that's safe. And I tell people that too, like especially my kids as they've grown up, like even about people as you go through your circles of who has the authority to influence you. Like back to social media. Social media in and of itself, I don't personally believe is an inherently evil tool that the devil's created for destruction of the world. Some people do. Right. But I don't. I think that I actually like social media because it gives me a chance to connect with people that I don't see all the time. But like anything, it's all about the tilt, right? Do you use it for, what do you use it for? And I had a person say, you know, there's a lot of noise in the world and counter communication and things. So why not put like life-giving, gospel-filled words out into the world? So, but I think that it's definitely an intentional process every day, like you were saying. There's no big answer. So I think it's good. I think that's really, really good. So you're coaching and you're working and you're being a mom and you're living your faith. What else? Is there anything else that you want to talk? Do you want to talk a little bit about your coaching program and how people can work with you, and what does that look like?
Yes. So my coaching process, I call it revival, because I think that it starts with getting back into God first and figuring out those boundaries. So I take you through a process that allows you to take a look at your life in an objective way and really start changing the things that you want to do. So we go through things like boundaries and making smart goals and drinking your water and just treating your body kindly, because once your body is running effectively, it can change everything in the world, your perspective. I don't want to say plagued by, but I am affected deeply by people's moods and depression. Like I am on meds for depression, and I don't think that's a bad thing. But also I have to do things actively to make sure that I don't get sucked into those deep, dark places where it's hard to get out from.
Sure.
So when I'm coaching people, I want to make sure that they are doing the things that they are supposed to be also doing. So I have them go get all their blood checked, get your vitamin D checked, get your calcium checked, because those things can really affect your mood and your life. And then we start getting into more things like, who are you created to be? What are the things you love? Because when your passion and your calling align, you find your purpose. And I want everybody to live their purpose. I was working with one client, and she had just gotten out of the military, and she was like, okay, I got to get a job. I got to figure out what I'm going to do. My kids are here. I got to put them in, like, no, I need you to just calm down and like kind of demilitarize for a second and think of all the things you can do, because you don't have to have a job. Like you're blessed right now to be able to have your kids home because your husband is still active duty and you guys live on base. and you don't actually need all this extra money. Then we talk about kind of financially, like helping her pay off her car and what that looks like and helping her create a budget. I just want everybody to live their best life and what that means for them, and making sure that they are aligned with God first and finding out what He has for them, and then not worrying about what people say that they're supposed to be doing or how they're supposed to be doing whatever it is that they're doing. And like just being more bold about, no, I am this person and this is what I'm supposed to be doing and I'm going to do that. So she said, you know what? At this point, I'm not going to look for a job and try and find a new career. I am just going to raise my kids. They're young. I'm going to be at home with them before they go to school. And I was so happy for her because she was just a mess. You know what I mean? Like she just so lost. And I was like, no, just focus on God. Let's just focus on God.
Yeah. The anxiety of it, right? That anxiety of it. Yeah. It's like, I call it cat on a curtain. Like that's what I say. And my husband recently, I'm in a transition right now too with leaving a full-time job and doing some other stuff. And so I got like cat on a curtain, and I was like, what about this and this and this and this? And my husband was like, get off the curtain. Get off the curtain. It will be fine. And that was all he said. And I was like, that's fair. I'm on the curtain, aren't I? He's like, yes, you are. You are on the curtain. Get off the curtain. And I'm just like, but like you said, there's so many things. And I feel like I like margin. That's the thing I've learned over the last, like having margin and all of those bends, like you said, is so important. Financial margin and emotional margin and spiritual margin and physical margin. Like how do you, for you in your scenario with your life, how do you create that margin? Because life happens, right? And the curtain kind of shows up when there's no margin left and you're right on the line. And I feel like that's, like you said, it's learning how to be intentional. I say that holding space, like the active waiting, is hard because oh my gosh, you have to hold the line. Like the be still and know is, I know one woman, I've watched her be still before the Lord, and it is impressive to watch because she's like, I'm waiting on the Lord. And I'm like, no, just make a decision. Do you want to be in the Bible study or not? And she's like, I'm waiting on the Lord. And then you come back the next week and she's like, I'm waiting on the Lord. I was like, how do you do that? I made 12 decisions already. I'm like, come on, Jesus, let's go. I'm leaving. He's like, you don't know how to wait. So I've learned that over the years. Margin goes back to, like you said, like, and getting things aligned, like you're saying. So she's transitioning from the military and now she's got, these other things, all these bends, and mom and wife and still serving. It's a military spouse. And like you're saying, is trying to help put those pieces, the foundation in order, right? Like you're trying to help them build foundational blocks that are regardless of your vocation or your duty title or whatever. Yeah. I think that's so important because you don't know what the next chapter of life will be. Right. Yeah.
She could move tomorrow because she's active duty, right? So who knows? But I do want to make sure that she's good for life. Like these are things that can help you no matter what part of life you're at. That's what I want for her.
So good. And I think that's the whole, that's what I started this podcast, was like that we are entrusted with the care and safekeeping of other people. And that leadership starts with us, right? Yes. But you can't do that when you have a gaping chest wound, as I kind of like use the analogy, physically or mentally or emotionally or financially. You've got to kind of put these things in order for you to then give back to the world. So I think that's really, really good. So if people wanted to work with you, how could they do that? Like, how do they find you? They
could find me on the grams at Jeanette Peterson. And I would love to give everybody my 40 prayers for business and life. They have been life-changing for me. And one of the ones that I use a lot is the Jabez prayer, and it's in there. So if you go to JeanettePeterson.com/prayers, you can get those and start coaching with me. It's on my website, JeanettePeterson.com.
That's so cool. And you have a course and you have your podcast. Yes. Yeah. Yes. So that's so good. So they can reach you in all the different places. And we'll put those links in the show notes too, so everybody can find you. Well, it has been a blessing with just joining you today. Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about your story. And I'm just fascinated how the Lord brings people into our life in different seasons. So I'm surprised our lives have never crossed paths before, but now you're kind of in my circle. So I hope you stay.
We're now best friends. I hope you know that.
We are. We may have our own podcast in like 3 months. Yes. No, it's so good. I just love what you're doing. I love that you're transparent and vulnerable about your journey, which I feel like we don't always do. And I love that you're taking the 3 things that you learned today and you're giving them back to the world the best that you can. So hats off to you. Great job.
Thank you.
You are very welcome. Thanks for listening to the Entrusted to Lead podcast. This podcast was brought to you by our amazing producers at Wildfire Creative Company. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please hop over to iTunes or Spotify, subscribe, rate it, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. And make sure you come back. We'll talk more about the essence and elements of leadership on the first and third Thursday of every month. If you enjoyed today's show, you can head over to danitacummins.com/podcast and gain access to additional free resources. But make sure you subscribe to our newsletter so you can stay up to date on the latest shows. Have an amazing day. Talk to you soon.